Good people, this might be the world's most accurate gaming mouse. It might not make you a better player, but it might teach you the steps on how to become better with the tools for aim. Have you ever gotten a new mouse and set it to the same DPI that you're constantly used to, and yet somehow it feels different, either too fast or too slow or too sensitive in one or the other directions, and not because of the weight or because of the shape? There's something going on with the sensor. Right now, both of these mice are set to 700 DPI, and look what happens when I try to move 180 degrees to imitate a flick and see how much distance both of these cover. So yeah, definitely the Viper Mini right now, a 700 DPI, covers 4 centimeters more than the other one. So you gotta lower the DPI on this one to get a similar comfortable result. As you saw, all the mice were set to the exact same DPI, but the movement on screen versus physical movement is totally different. We're not taking into account CPI deviation across mice, and that's where ROG really is the first company I actually seen to include that specification in their brief. What CPI deviation stands for is that relationship between the physical movement on the mouse mat versus how sensitive and how much you're actually moving on the screen. And you might be set to 800 DPI on all the mice, but that physical movement might not necessarily translate to be identical across all mice. And this is where the Harpe ACE Edition mouse and the Hone ACE Edition mousepad with AimLab collaboration really tries to give you a good reference point on how to start to use measurements to give you that baseline on what you're comfortable with, and potentially use that information for future mice to make sure that when you are moving on to something else, DPI is not the only measurement you gravitate towards, but you're using physical measurements and some AimLab training as well. To tell you the truth, I have never done automatic setting optimizations for a mouse, so I'm excited to see what AimLab gives me in terms of DPI, sensitivity, angle adjustment, although I don't understand why angle adjustment would be there in the first place, and liftoff distance. But first of all, always make sure that enhanced pointer precision crap is disabled. Acceleration, we don't want that. We want that raw input. So in AimLab, you have to go to custom setting optimizer. If you do have the mouse connected, the mouse DPI, angle tuning, and liftoff distance would be available, but if you don't have it, they'll be grayed out and unavailable. You can still do sensitivity training for optimizations for whatever mouse you want, but sensitivity is different versus DPI, so that's something to keep in mind. That sensitivity in-game versus raw mouse DPI. So let's start with DPI. It says about 10 minutes to complete this task and see what DPI I get. Right now I'm running at 650, and that's something that I'm really comfortable with this mouse in terms of flicks and everything. So let's see if I get anything close to that. Tracking is my least favorite thing. It is right in early in the morning, so I do apologize for my terrible aim right now, but it's all for science. It's good that we have the completion time down too, so you know how far you're moving along. Like, I'm already kind of bored of this, and you constantly have to like readjust your muscle memory. It also allows you to figure out your weaknesses in direction of certain aim. For example, right now with this mouse, I am very good at like side to side and going up, but going to the bottom right, for example, is a little tricky. Like, I have a little bit less control than going into other directions. And doing AimLab or any other trainer would really allow you to figure out those weaknesses and work on those weaknesses. It's very difficult for me with all these higher DPI sensitivities because I overshoot so much, and I need to use my pinky for that aim correction because that's how I slow down the mouse. All right, based on performance, we recommend the following DPI, 800. So that's kind of my go-to setting, but I lower it to 700 and kind of move around, and then even went to 650 earlier on today before. So we're gonna apply the setting, and these settings will be applied directly on the mouse. Next up, let's try angle tuning. I have no idea why this would be a thing at all, just because you don't want any angle tuning, right? Let's see how this works. Ooh, this is my my least favorite thing with tracking. I'm really bad at tracking toe. Based on your performance, we're on the following angle tuning value. I mean, degree angle, I guess, let's try it. And the last thing would be liftoff distance. Normally I set it to the least smallest liftoff distance just so that when I do flick and lift the mouse, there is nothing applied in terms of aim correction right after the mouse is placed down on the mat, but let's see. Ooh. All right, I'm kind of getting a hang of it now. The thing is, by the end of the test, you kind of get a little bit more in tune with the test. So I wonder if I have to redo these a couple of times just to make sure that it's actually reflecting on my performance and not just my muscle memory kicking in. It's a good thing I have all this area on the mouse mat just to really explore because of how horrible I am with tracking. Hello, there we go. Yes, liftoff distance on low would be my preferred choice. Thank you very much, AimLab. So what I found out after jumping into CSGO, after doing the AimLab optimizations, that those optimizations are only little reference points. You know, 800 DPI for me, for example, wasn't exactly my thing, especially with the sensitivity that I play in with CSGO. So I definitely had to lower it to 650 and make sure that my sensitivity in game is perfectly, you know, reasonable. If you're just like starting out with a new mouse that you are unfamiliar with, for example, it's a really good option to kind of fine tune to see what the auto optimizations would give you. Okay. Ooh. Oh, no! So what do I take away from doing the AimLab optimizations? Beautiful shot. Is that it's a good reference point to start somewhere. But then you kind of maneuver from there. You know, work away, massage away the DPI to what you're comfortable with. Whew, that 180, man. Really fine-tuning the DPI for the flick for whoever's after is really, really helpful. Now, aside from all the AimLab optimizations, the mouse itself is very complete specs-wise. It's a solid shell, no perforations. It's only a 54-gram body and feels really nice. There's a slight texture difference between the primary triggers, which are slightly smoother versus the rest of the body. We do have textured sides and nice side buttons as well. The battery life on here is up to 90 hours and a 2.4 gigahertz signal, but this thing is both 2.4 gigahertz and Bluetooth compatible, which is amazing. So up to 98 hours of continuous operation in Bluetooth mode. We have the DPI and the power switch at the bottom, and of course, little space for your dongle. So you can travel with dongle, no problem, and it charges with USB-C. So all in all, specs-wise, this mouse is awesome. ROG gives some of the best stickers, as you can see. We also have grip tape with this really cool ROG design, and also additional mouse gates if you ever want to replace them. Nice. I really like this whole hub approach because the cable is always available if you want to recharge your mouse. And we also have a clip at the bottom over here, so it's a really easy attachment to the mouse mat. So the dongle is as close to the mouse as possible, and you can always charge the mouse like that, and this thing is not going anywhere. As for the mouse mat, the most important thing is, of course, the tracking texture is really nice. It is waterproof, oil-proof as well, which is really interesting. Nice, cool little stitching. And also, the most important thing are the centimeter markings that you can utilize to create your perfect 180-degree measurement, and making sure that you adjust your DPI based on the actual physical movement on the mouse mat instead of just setting your DPI to whatever. I would say the biggest advantage with the Harpe ACE and the Hone ACE collaboration with AimLab is that initial starting point. It's a great way to have a new mouse and trying to figure out what DPI you're using, set the sensitivity that you're normally used to for a particular genre and game in AimLab, that's possible, and then go ahead and play around with all DPI, but it's a really good starting point to optimize and see what the game gives you and go from there. This thing goes up to 36,000 in the DPI range, which is way too much, like no one ever uses that, but the sensor, that's where things get really interesting with that CPI deviation being lower than 1%. And that is great. That means the relationship between that physical movement of CPI or counts per inch or how sensitive the mouse is reflecting accurately to how many pixels you are moving on the screen. And that's the really important bit. That's the accuracy that you get. So I've learned two things from this whole experiment. Number one is that I've never used the physical measurement to get myself to that proper DPI level that I'm used to. I've just always set to 800 DPI and go from there. Sometimes things feel just right and sometimes things don't, and I adjust DPI accordingly. But moving forward, you know, this thing is very convenient with the mouse mat having that measurement built in, but it doesn't deter you from using ruler or some other method. And for number two, I feel like AimLab is on track to give you that nice starting point to go from, but as you play, it doesn't show you which DPI AimLab is giving you to play with. So for example, sometimes, you know, you're on a really high DPI and you're like, this feels really weird, but then the next time it switches to your perfect DPI and you want to know what that is, potentially if you want to just go back straight into that DPI level, that would be really nice. But all in all, I feel like this is the right way to target gamers and help you train your aim and give you a little bit of that toolkit on how to do it properly, not just for this mouse, but for all other mice in the future. I'm Dimitri, thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you think of the whole approach with AimLab, and if you've been using any aim trainers, what's your experience been like? I'm curious to know. I'll talk to you in the next video.